Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Administrative Regulations video lecture. This lecture is part of the English legal writing series. So, regulations. What will we talk about in this video? We'll briefly start with some of the origins and authority of administrative regulations, and then we'll dig into the primary publications of the federal administrative materials. That's the Code of Federal Regulations and the Federal Register. And then at the end, we'll jump into Westlaw and do some searches and poke around the Federal Administrative Regulations section. So in the United States, sources of law, most of you can maybe recognize that they come from Constitution, statutes, and then judicial opinions. That's judge-made law. So basically what happens is our legislatures, when they create statutes, they create the statute with a broad aim. And then after they've written that law with a broad aim, they delegate the details to the specific administrative agency. And the administrative agency promulgates regulations. So that's kind of how it works. And these are kind of thought of as the executive-made rules, the executive branch. So our legislature creates the law, the executive branch implements the law through administrative regulations. So when we research the federal regulations, we are looking at two separate publications. There are more, but we'll focus in on two publications. It's the Code of Federal Regulations, the CFR is what you'll see, and the Federal Register, the FR. The CFR allows us to look up regulations by topic easily, but the federal regulations have background information. They go beyond basically the actual code, the regulations themselves, and it's valuable to understand some of that information. The CFR contains all the federal regulations in force, arranged by topical order. So you'll see in another video the USC, it's for federal statutes. Similarly, we have the CFR for federal regulations. And they have the same basic structure. So the sections as building blocks. We have chapters and subchapters that are grouped into titles. When we're searching for specific topics, you would do the same thing as you would if you were looking at the USC. And we'll talk about more when we dig into the Westlaw. So for the Federal Register, these publications contain more information than the CFR or the other federal regulatory publications. So the Federal Register is published daily, and the pages number consecutively by the year. So what usually happens is when a federal agency wants to change a regulation, what they'll do is they'll give a notice and issue the proposed regulation in the Federal Register is a proposed rule. They'll detail why they need to change the regulation, and they'll give people, there's usually like a comment period to give the citizens and companies the opportunity to comment on the proposed rule. And usually what happens is there's a period of comment, then the agency will publish their responses to the comments in another issue of the Federal Register. And after they've assessed all the comments and addressed all the comments, made the changes to the regulation that they want, they'll issue it as a final rule in the Federal Register. So then the final rules will then be incorporated into the CFR at the appropriate section as regulations. So you'll need to realize that a lot of times the CFR might not be updated as quickly as what you'll see in the Federal Register. So you always want to check the Federal Register, especially in these databases. Sometimes the databases don't get updated as quickly as necessary. Researchers might use the Federal Register to kind of do background information because you can see the notice, you can see the original rule, you can see the agency's comment to the original rule, and then you can see the change in the final rule in the Federal Register. So then there's these administrative decisions and guidance. So the Federal Register won't contain all of the work produced by federal agencies. Sometimes they'll publish their own titles containing supplemental information. You can look at the Blue Book, actually, to determine which publications are available in a particular federal agency. You can find this in the table 1, usually, of the Blue Book. So, and we kind of think of these supplementary materials produced by the administrative agencies in two broad categories: administrative decisions and administrative guidance. These aren't law, so they don't create binding rules of law, but they provide, as the name indicates, guidance to interpreting the regulations. How does a particular agency interpret their own regulation? So administrative decisions would resemble more judicial opinions, but they're kind of the agency's own hearings or review boards. So they don't generate common law. That's important because the administrative bodies get their authority from Congress. So they're Article 1 courts, but only Article 3 courts, they get their authority directly from the Constitution. These are only the ones that act as common law courts. So Article 3 relates to courts. Article 1 would relate to the Congress. So Congress-made courts don't generate common law. So where would you find administrative decisions? You can find it on Westlaw. The particular agency might have a publication that contains decisions. So, for example, and libraries who participate in the Federal Depository Library Program would have copies of these. You can also look in Westlaw. So a quick word on state regulations. State executive agencies also have their own administrative regulations, but for purposes of this, we'll mainly focus on federal regulations. But just know that they are out there. State regulators will also hold hearings that will lead to administrative decisions and create documentation that you can use for administrative guidance. The state tax authorities will do this. Property tax authorities in the state will do this as well. So that gives you kind of the building blocks. Let's jump into Westlaw. So again, here's the Westlaw welcome screen, and you'll see again our ability to browse, right? So if we're looking for federal regulatory materials, we'll click on federal materials. Then, of course, you'll see the federal cases, the different circuits, the Supreme Court. But here you'll see the Code of Federal Regulations. You'll see the administrative decisions and guidance. And you'll see the Federal Register. So these are kind of the three things we talked about just a minute ago. So if you see the Code of Federal Regulations, you'll see them broken up into title. So you can browse, if you would like, by title. Or if we go back, you can see the Federal Register. And this gives us the most current Federal Register as of December 8th. I'm recording this on December 9th in the Taipei time zone. So we're almost still December 8th for the next 3 minutes. So it gives you the most up-to-date Federal Register notices, and you can browse. Same thing for administrative decisions and guidance. You can browse the executive branch agencies in their offices for guidance, as well as kind of these other agencies. But what's going to help us the most is, well, I don't know if it'll help the most, but what's valuable is to, beyond browsing, is to be able to search. And we do this by using our search bar. And again, we're going to just stick with the all federal, and we will do a search for unmanned vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles, and see what this gets us. So you'll see, for me, it goes to secondary sources, but you'll have here regulations and administrative guidance. So if we click on regulations, it'll give us the search results, Title 33, Title 33. All of this is Title 33 relating to the Coast Guard. You can do filters just as you do with any search, so you can filter which title you're looking for. But I think we're getting kind of and here's some administrative guidance that you can use. But I think we're getting a little bit too much results. So let's say I wanted to focus on exporting unmanned aerial vehicles. And I really didn't know where to start. I would say, first of all, I'd want to do maybe some quotes here. So we only pick up unmanned aerial vehicles, not unmanned aerial vehicles, however those words end up in the document. And let's use the connector and let's just put export and see what happens. So we get regulations, 51 regulations. Let's see what this does. Okay, the Title 22, Department of State, International Traffic in Arms Regulations. This looks like we're getting close to what we want. The second one, Title 15, Commerce, the Export Administration Regulations, the EAR, and ITAR. I'll admit I did this search before, knowing that I'd get these two results, but these are basically the two. ITAR and EAR regulates exports of military equipment and what's called dual-use items. So I'd be able to kind of go in and see where the USML, what that says about unmanned aerial vehicles. So this would get me started on my search. Again, you can filter just as you would before by title. Title 15 and 22 are likely going to get you close. Again, you can also filter by whether or not you viewed it in the last 30 days or not. So this is kind of valuable in that, well, you don't want to look at stuff that you've already looked at before. So maybe you just would click not viewed. Maybe you viewed something and you can't remember what you viewed, and then you would click viewed, so you'd get an idea of what you were looking at before. Again, you can save it to your folders and that sort of thing, and administrative decisions and guidance. You can also check Department of Justice. These are from the Department of Justice, telling us relating to, it looks like press releases relating to people getting caught illegally exporting unmanned aerial vehicles. So this is our video on federal regulations. Thanks, everybody, and take care.